This is a disclaimer because of our accreditation standards that we're required to display. Since we do have training materials, anything that you would or could purchase from CCI is not required to take the exam. It doesn't indicate a better outcome on the exam if you do. So just our disclaimer there. Objectives, I'm going to go over the eligibility, the different elements of what's on the CNOR exam, study strategies, and then strategies for answering multiple choice questions. So CNOR certification is defined as the documented validation of the professional achievement of identified standards of practice by an individual registered nurse providing care for patients before, during, and after surgery. So CNOR, certified perioperative registered nurses. We have a lot of certifications. Some are acronyms, some are not. CNOR is not. It's certified perioperative registered nurses. And this is really our specialty. So seeking certification in our specialty really speaks to our patients, our peers, and the public about why that's important to us, and it is a personal and professional achievement. Eligibility, you have to have a current unrestricted nursing license in the country where you are currently practicing. You have to have completed a minimum of 2 years and 2,400 hours of experience in perioperative nursing practice. Half of that must be in the intraoperative setting or affecting the intraoperative setting. We do count like education, research. If those activities are impacting intraoperative patient care, that would be part of your 1,200 hours. Currently working full or part-time in perioperative nursing, clinical practice, education, admin, or research. There are different eligibility pathways. So if you hold our CFPN, Certified Foundational Perioperative Nurse certification, that is a certification you earn just out of orientation. You can sit for the CNOR exam at 18 months. You still have to have that 2,400 hours. The exam itself is 200 multiple choice questions. You have 3 hours and 45 minutes to take the exam. It is updated annually to reflect current references. 3 hours and 45 minutes is averaging about a minute a question, which seems like a very short amount of time. But when I give you some of the practice questions, we can actually time it, and you'll see how much time a minute really is. Resources on the exam. These are the subject areas. So this is from nurses, your peers, who get together and do perioperative job analysis with us as volunteers. And this is how they say their day as a perioperative nurse is split up. They say 15% of their day is on pre- and post-operative patient assessment and diagnosis, 8% plan of care. Obviously, the most is intraoperative, and that's split by patient care and then management of personnel, services, and materials. So 15% of the exam will be on pre- and post-op. 8% will be on plan of care. So you can see these are the percentages. That's the percentage of those topics on the actual exam. Books for the exam to study from, and Colleen had talked about this. The most current edition of the AORN guidelines for perioperative practice, a perioperative textbook. You don't need both Alexander's and Bearing Cones. One or the other will be fine. And then Drain's Peri-Anesthesia Nursing. The questions from the exam come from all of these resources. So I would say don't focus on any one. You definitely need access to the guidelines, a perioperative textbook, and then Drain's Peri-Anesthesia Nursing, especially focused on that pre- and post-operative care. So those are the books. Additional resources, CCI has free resources. The first thing I would say to download, if you haven't already, is the Candidate Handbook. This is where you're going to get all the information on the exam, topics, all of that. We have a study plan that's free to download as well. It breaks down all of those topic areas into bits and pieces. So if you don't do geriatric and you're in domain 1 about pre and post-op care, and you need to know something about a geriatric patient, you're going to read chapter 15 in Berry & Cohn's pages, 700 to 729. So the study plan breaks down all those topics and keywords, and actually gives you reading assignments from those 4 textbooks or online resources to regulatory agencies. So again, free download and create your own study plan. Sample CNOR questions we have. Our staff obviously is a great resource for you. And then we also have webinars on our YouTube channel. Additional resources that are recommended: having access to a pathophysiology textbook, some type of medical dictionary, lab results. You can certainly use your intranet or whatever your facility lab results are. It's not going to give us lab results according to a hospital in Saudi Arabia, a hospital in Northern Michigan. It's going to give a standardized range of what those results would be. Drug references, we like to use Hippocrates as an app or online because it's constantly being updated, but even your in-house hospital formulary to look up some specific medications. AAMI, anything about instrumentation, sterilizing, you can get from that, and your sterile processing department should have that manual. And then, like I said, regulatory or official websites like CDC or the Joint Commission. All of those should be resources that you look to when you're trying to study for the exam. Again, not required. It doesn't indicate a better outcome. These are resources that CCI offers. On-demand prep course, we have a prep book. We have a bundle. We have an online practice exam. We partnered with Pocket Prep, and there's 800 questions in an app. However you want to study, like Colleen had said, different multiple ways, you can certainly combine all of them. Test taking strategies: do a self-assessment, build on what you already know rather than starting from the beginning. So my suggestion is to take the study plan, download it, go through and highlight areas where you feel you need more education and need to look into more resources, and then start with those highlighted areas and go through. Like I said, the study plan has keywords from each of those topic areas. Use the subject areas to organize your study plan. Obviously, we don't do a lot of sterile processing. Previously on the exam, when we teach our prep course, we look to see where people are scoring the best. And it really surprised me that where people were scoring lower was intraoperative. And I'm wondering if that's because we think we know that part, so we don't really look at that part and we look at all the other stuff. I'm not sure, but definitely do your own self-assessment. Be honest with how familiar you are on the different topics, and go through those study plans, highlight areas. Start with subject areas. You can start with the highest percentage of questions, which would be the intraoperative patient safety, or areas that are least familiar, which most likely is infection and instrumentation. Recommended study time is 3 months to the exam. When you're studying, turn off your text messaging, TV, email while you study so you can really be focused. Break up content into bite-sized chunks, 20 minutes, an hour at a time, because after that, you're not really going to retain anything. So make sure you're taking bits and pieces. Being able to apply broad concepts versus memorizing just facts and figures. If there's anything you want to memorize, blood gases, lab values, potassium, anything like that, that's fine. But in the big process, you're really looking at the nursing process. So a lot of times people come out of the exam and say, oh my gosh, they had so many I questions on there. That would be me, because I did cardiac most of my life and I would be stumped with I questions. But in reality, it wasn't really an I question. We were talking about a patient having a cataract who's being positioned supine. Well, you know nursing process and how to take care of a patient who's supine, but don't get thrown off by those kind of things. So look at it from the broad aspect and nursing process. Practice by taking multiple choice style exam questions. Those are the only questions that are on the exam, multiple choice. And we have a couple of those here. So multiple choice, you have the STEM, which is the actual question itself. And everything you need to know to answer the question is in that STEM. Don't add anything. Don't assume anything. If it's not in the question, it's not part of it. The question can be open-ended, where you fill in the blank, or closed-ended, ends with a question mark, and they want to know your response. The options, there's always 4 options for every question. The key is the correct answer. Distractors are plausible, but not correct. So if I were to ask you, what is the capital of Michigan? Because that's where I live and work from. I could say Detroit, Ann Arbor, Flint, Lansing. Well, they're all plausible because they're all cities in Michigan, but only one of them is the capital, and that's Lansing. So think of it that way. Other tips. Again, always 4 options, 1 correct. They're distractors. There are no true and false. There are no multiple choice, A, B, C, but not D, all of the above, none of the above. There are no calculations that require a calculator. There's no pictures. Pay attention to key words such as first, best, or most in the stem of the question. Common test taking errors, reading into the stem, putting more information into that question than what you need to. If it's there, then it's part of the question. Overthinking. I think this trips some people up is, we've been nurses for 10, 20, 30 years, some of us. And when we look at a question, we automatically know the answer. These questions are written for a nurse with 2 years of experience. So you really need to step back and go, okay, I'm talking baby steps here. I need to look at the step-by-step process, not the big picture, because the questions are written for someone with 2 years of experience. Too much time to answer the question. Like I said, a minute per question. Missing the quantifier, best, first, always. Changing answers to multiple questions. Expecting the same questions on the exam that are in practice exams or prep products. We have a strict process in place where we go through anything that goes into any of our prep products to make sure that they are not on the exam. So those are some of the errors. Answering questions based on experience. We cannot provide a test for someone who has 10 years of experience, 3 years of experience, someone who works, at a trauma 2 hospital, someone who works at a community hospital. This is based on common knowledge that everybody has access to. It's not based on your policies or your procedures. We can't test based on a hospital in Denver, Colorado, what their policy is versus a policy in Detroit, Michigan. So it's all best practice information that's available to everybody. And then using tricks, there are people out there that will say, choose B, the longest option, the shortest option. That's not true. We're not trying to trick you. So don't think if you don't know, always pick B. Don't do that. Instead, analyze the correct question. What do you need to know to answer the question? A lot of times we recommend don't look at the options, read the question. And if you think you know the answer, look. And if that answer is one of the options, likely that's probably the correct one. When you sit down to take the test, they'll give you a tutorial ahead of time. It doesn't count against your time. And you can mark questions, highlight questions. I tend to read really fast. So when I took a certification exam several years ago, I used the highlighter and I would read the question. I would reread the question and highlight any keywords that I needed. Then I'd read it again and then look at the options. So it made me slow down to really get all of the questions that were being asked. So if you were unfamiliar with the content of the question, where would you go to find out more information? We always have reference and rationale for all of our practice questions. So if you don't know, go back and look at that, or look at the study plan and say, okay, I kind of messed up on this question, practice question. Where can I find the answer to look at more information? And why were the other options incorrect? All right, sample questions. And I'm going to put 1 minute on my timer here. So here is the first question. I'm going to time it for 1 minute, only the first one. And you guys can put in the chat what you think the questions are. And Bassel, if you can tell me if it's showing what answers. So first question, the patient population which accounts for the greatest number of eye muscle procedures is, starting the timer.
We have two answers. The first one is pediatric. The second one is geriatric.
Okay.
And my guess is geriatric.
Still not done with a minute. Okay, that was a minute. That seemed extremely long, I think, in my opinion. Okay, so those are the answers we usually get, split between A and D. And the correct answer is A, because we're looking at number of eye muscle procedures. Everybody thinks eye, they think cataract. So they immediately go to geriatric. So that was the key. So greatest number of eye muscle procedures. So really looking at what that key was, it is pediatric. And here's the reference from Baring-Cones down to the page number and why that is. So here's another one for you. The most effective way to evaluate a patient's comprehension of their upcoming surgery is to... Everybody should get this one. A, have the patient describe the procedure in their own words. And then again, here's your reference, Baring-Cones, page 375. And this is the best way to evaluate that they know what they're talking about, or they understand the procedure. And this next one, we always get a 50-50 split as well. Perioperative nurse discovers that a sponge is missing during the closing count for a left lung lobectomy. The nurse's first action would be to...
We have two A's and one B.
And that's what we always get. Split between A and B, 50-50. And the correct answer is notify the surgeon, because what's he doing while you're telling him the count's incorrect? He's continuing to close the patient while you're trying to repeat another count. We need him to stop closing the patient and do a methodical wound examination, look for the sponge, and then you can repeat the count. But the first thing you need to do is to stop him from closing. And that's from the 2023 AORN guidelines on prevention of retained surgical items. Excuse me, application, apply online. This is the link here. Pay your fee. There are randomized audits for applications. And if you were audited, you would have to provide documentation from your supervisor. Yes, this is where you work. Yes, you've completed this many hours. You choose your test date and test site. So once your application is approved, you pay your fee. You would go to our testing center link, which is PSI, and then you look through and decide where and when to take your test. And they are all over the world. And then the last slide here, fees and payments. CNOR exam take 2 facility includes a $50 discount on the standard $495, and this is through our work with Caroline. For that $50 discount, you must sign up on the document with Caroline. Sorry, didn't mean to add the A there. If you register yourself as an individual, you will pay the regular fee of $495. But if you sign up with Caroline, it would be the $445.